This is a tutorial on a beat that I made from a Beethoven sample using Sonar, Producer Edition 8, and also Reason. So let's begin. Alright, so let's get into the tutorial. First thing I'm going to do is play the sample for you so you can kind of get a listen to it. It actually played right before this portion, but I'll play it again so you can kind of hear it, see what it sounds like. So here it is. Alright, so it's not very much going on there. It's mostly strings and percussion with a little bit of a build up at the end. So now what I'll do is get into the actual track or beat portion that I altered the sample with. So first, and the way I laid it out, I had the sample come in first with no beat, then the beat kicks in, and then it actually breaks down into three different portions if you see here. So you got the introduction, the verse, chorus, or however you want to assign it. It's just three different portions, three different ways of doing it. So let's do it. Alright, so that's basically it. I just altered the sample three different ways, and I really didn't use three different ways. I actually just took the primary piece there and just kind of switched up a couple parts. I mean, because if you listen, the very back piece, this piece here, is actually the end on all of them. So I, just did that so there's a little bit of consistency in the beat, one that is noticeable, and then you also be able to kind of tell timeline wise where you are in the track, for verse writing purposes or whatever. So right now what I'm gonna do, get that off the screen, is just put out what the simple drum track sounds like. Now I've actually put some effects on here, so I'm actually take those off right now so you can just kind of hear the dry drum track piece by piece, and then bring the effects back in so you can kind of see how it all comes together. And also too, just a side note, if you are going to use Reason and drum tracks, I think the easiest way of creating your instruments and your effects, whatever you want to put on there, is actually just highlighting that and right clicking and going to create, because what that does, and I'll show you here, if you look in the back rack mode, if you were to hook this up live, if you had all these different effects and processors and amps and whatnot, this this rack view kind of gives you an example of what you would need to do to hook each piece up, so you can kind of manipulate that same sound all over again, and you can kind of see how it links each piece together with whatever effect you've assigned to it. So just kind of something different. I mean, you can see here the two effects here are running off of each other, but they're all coming out of the same one drum piece. So basically, I'll start off with a basic drum beat with just the kick drum and the snare, and not a very complex not too complex of a piece, and then I just start to layer the different portions on top of that. And normally when I lay out a track, that's what I try and do. Start off with a basic drum beat, just so as you're playing around with ideas and different things of that nature, you don't have to do so much work in going back to what you started if you already have something separate. If that's your base and you're building on top of that, with different layers, you could always just delete that one layer if you don't like that idea, and then just come back to whatever your basics and just build back on top of that. So just started with the basic kick and snare, added what you would maybe call some I don't know, bongo or kind of percussion accents, and then just built some hi-hat pieces on top of that. So that's the basic beat there, and that's with no effects. And the only reason I put the effects on there is to kind of give the drum portion of it a little bit of distinction, a little bit of character, because it kind of sounds dry by itself. I mean, you can get away with that, but I kind of want to give it a certain feel, so it kind of does something that you wouldn't normally do with just, because the effects are on here for a reason. I mean, you might as well try and get accustomed to them and try and use them. Basically, I just put some simple effects in there, some reverb, phaser, distorter, unison, compressor, just your typical ones. And the reverb is to kind of give it more of that studio type of feel. And the reason I put the compressor and the reverb on the kick snare portion, I mean, if you kind of listen to it without it, when you add the other effects in there, it kind of tends to fade back. I mean, the accents do just that, they accent the basic beat, but when you add the sample in, the sample has its own percussion in there, and it has its own kind of rhythmic flow just by the way the sample is laid out. So you don't necessarily want to lose that basic foundation throughout the entire track. So that's why I put the compressor and the reverb is on small room, just so you can kind of give it a little bit of a kind of studio, maybe electric drum set kind of feel to it. So it's nice and tight, but it still has those kind of um, acoustic characteristics to it. You still can kind of hear a little bit of an echo and all that, in the background. If you listen. So it kind of has the sound of a cross between like an acoustic or an electric set, kind of a combination of both. But that's pretty much it. Um, like I said, the beat's not really that complex. I mean, you have a little bit of a build-up kick at the end. Also, too, I wanted to point out to those of you who may be using Reason and may have kind of got confused on some stuff. If you go into your track edit portion, you see this little drop down menu here, and for the life of me I couldn't figure this out at first. You can always enable your snap to grid or unenable it, whatever your preference is. I would suggest, unless you're a very, very timely drummer yourself, and because you run into all the different things. I mean, latency with your keyboard to computer setup and stuff like that. But you could never go wrong with your snap to grid, because what it's going to basically do is simply just going to quantize it. Whatever tempo you set, it's going to set markers according to where that will fall based on that tempo and that measured time frame. But if you look at this drop down menu here, you can go all the way down to 1/64th of a measure. So you would get those real quick hits, that's as close as you can get to it. Uh, so you can kind of alter your beat manually. I don't necessarily. I'm not a drummer myself. I'm a keyboard player, so I just draw the notes in there and I assign them based on where they were fitting in the rhythm. But to you drummers out there, uh, I give you my props because I can't do it. I have to do it manually. So, but yeah, basically, that's pretty much the whole deal. I mean, um, I'm kind of liking what I came together with, and it didn't really take a long time. Probably the longest time was getting the sample right where you want it, but anything worth doing is worth taking the time of doing it right. So um, hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Feel free to rate, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. If you want this track, just inbox me or something. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy.